Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones, and we have a good show for you this week. We're going to talk about the Ducks on their homestand here, where they did pretty well, despite all the injuries, as you are all fully aware of. Of course, the Hockey Hall of Fame. We're going to talk about Teemu and Paul as well and go over that. Go over some of the games coming up, and we got some watch party news finally, so we'll get to all that in a little bit. But before the last the podcast that we did, Eddie, you know that news came out right after it because that's just how it works. So last time we left off was before the Kings game, and the big news came out about Getzlaf having surgery on his cheekbone. So the injury news continued. Unfortunately, the Ducks are without Getzlaf. They're saying about 2 months. And the Ducks went into the game against the Kings, which was a super wild game, kind of what we kind of expected it, Eddie, but not really. The Ducks being pretty injured without Getzlaf now, they go into this game. They actually get the first two goals. Jared Boll, the all-time leading scorer. No, just kidding. Jared Boll, he gets his first goal of the season. Vatanen gets his first goal of the season. Things are looking good in this game. The Ducks are up 2-1 early. Kopitar gets a late goal in the first period. The Ducks are still, looking okay. Raquel gets a goal. They're up 3-1. You think everything's good. And then, of course, the Kings come back and they end up tying the game. It goes to overtime, and the Ducks end up losing. But, some good takeaways in this game, Eddie. The Ducks for the first two periods look good, look strong. They did get a point without Getzlaf and all the other players, obviously. But a lot of stuff happened in this game, and we'll go over it. But what did you think about this game as far as the Ducks? It was a pretty high intensity affair.
Yeah, and I'm impressed that they were able to compete against such a good team with the limited roster they went in there with. Kasha got hurt early. He only played a minute 48, so you're already down a forward. And Jared Boll ended up leaving the game, so you're down two forwards because Jared Boll only played 3 minutes and 16 seconds in the game. So essentially you're playing the game with 10 forwards, and then you're rolling with the 6 defensemen. And the fact that they're able to play such a good game against, at the time, the Kings were the best team in the Western Conference, and to have a 3-1 lead, it's disappointing to blow that lead and only get the point. But again, the Ducks are victims of allowing way too many shots in the game, and it's 43 shots against in this one, and the duties were split between Gibson and Miller, because at one point Gibby left the game, and we didn't know if he was going to be back or if he had been injured, and Miller comes in and he shut the door for most of the third period in overtime. But what are you going to do? The Ducks overtime woes continue and the Kings win. But I think it's a hard fought point with a depleted lineup against a very good team.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's unfortunate you see the Ducks lose 2 more players like you were talking about. Kase gets knocked out. As you all know, he still hasn't played since this game, unfortunately. So that was a big loss because, you and I talked about Kase as one of our players to watch this season, see how he progresses and see how he goes. So they're very unfortunate, and, a good player that, a lot of people like. As one of the newer players. And then Gibson with the mask, he goes out. He doesn't play in the next game, which we'll get to in a little bit. But you see all this, and the Ducks, they didn't back down, though. They gave it back to the Kings pretty good. You saw Alec Martinez getting rocked, and he got knocked out of the game for a while. Kopitar ran in to, I believe it was Vatanen at one point, and he was out of the game for a little bit on a weird-looking play. So you had all kinds of stuff going on. Then, of course, we had Perry and Quick get into it, Eddie, and we saw basically Quick try to just punch Perry into the ice, and then Perry gets up and flips Quick's mask off. I know we posted that video, and then the whole melee ensued after that. And, of course, like you and I had talked about, Perry's getting back, this season, playing more of his, agitator type game, and that's exactly what he did in this contest. Just unfortunate the Ducks didn't get the 2 points. I really thought they could have, maybe if they were able to hang on at the end there, and Gibson was able to play the, the final third period part and all that, it might have changed. Who knows? But like you said, it was good to see the Ducks get a point. They really, fought it out with the Kings, and they're going to see the Kings in this coming week too, Eddie.
Yeah, and to get back to the Perry thing with Quick, I mean, they have a history, and we all know that in every game, Perry finds his way to the front of the net and is just trying to make life hell for Jonathan Quick. And we see it every time the Ducks and Kings play. We'll most likely see it this Saturday when they play again. So it's great to see him doing that. And, he's finally starting to get rewarded. Maybe not getting pucks in the back of the net, but he is sitting second on the Ducks in points. He's got 12 points in 18 games. So, he's getting up there. He's getting points again. We would love to see him score 20, 30 goals again. I'm not sure if that's going to happen this season again. Struggling to get the puck in the back of the net. Hopefully that can turn around once guys like Getzlaf and Kessler come back, and he's got a little bit more freedom and a lot more to work with offensively. So we'll see if if spark's gonna come from him. But yeah, I mean, you face the Kings again, like you said, this week, and we always know the Ducks and Kings games are going to be exciting, and the Kings are on a 4-game skid right now, so we'll see where they stand come the end of the week. But it's going to be a tough game. It's coming off a home game against Winnipeg, then you got to go down and play LA on a back-to-back, so it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and I'll just mention this now. We're going to have the watch party at El Ranchito again, 182 South Orange Street in Orange, that day on Saturday against the Kings. I'll mention it later in the show as well. But since we're just kind of talking about this now, we're going to have it then. It's going to be that Saturday, so it should be a lot of fun. I expect pretty good turnout. This is the first time that we've done a watch party with the Ducks against the Kings. So we're looking for, some excitement. Should be pretty good. So after this last game that they played the Kings, they then went and played Vancouver. And of course, because of all the injuries and things that happened in that King game, they had to call up Berra again. Kosla came up. Roy came up. All these guys basically went into the Vancouver game. Berra backed up Miller in this game, as Miller was going against his former team. And this game didn't start out good. Vancouver got the first goal, but after that, it was pretty much all Anaheim. Lindholm got a goal, Montour, and then Silfverberg with his crazy 2 goals in 35 seconds. The Ducks also went nuts on the power play. You saw they had 3 power play goals in this game, which is, the most they've had this season, and they just did great in this game. They outshot Vancouver 35-20. Pretty much everything went right in this game. Of course, Miller got hurt in this game and had to go out, but overall, a very good effort by the Ducks, Eddie.
Yeah, and the Ducks took advantage of sloppy play by the Canucks, and they went 3 for 6 on the power play, like you said, and that won them the game. I mean, that was the huge difference in this one. Vancouver didn't really get to play their style. Their style, as we talked about last podcast, was more of limiting chances and trying to suffocate their opponent. And they really couldn't get that going in this game, and that probably speaks to the fact that the Ducks were playing at home. It's a little bit harder for Vancouver to play their style, and it was a great game. It's nice to see the power play finally get something going. You had Lindholm, Montour, and Silfverberg getting power play goals. Raquel assisting on all of them. He had a great night as well, and then Silfverberg getting his second of the night. So, just all around a very good game. It's a team that had been, in most people's eyes, outperforming what they expected to be. And again, it's a Pacific Division matchup. It's essentially a 4-point game. So no matter who you're playing in the Pacific Division, it's an important game. So I think it was a big win, a good rebound from a disappointing loss against the Kings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw Manson and Dorsett go in a scrap in this game, which was kind of interesting because they went at it and then they kind of broke apart and went at it again. You don't see that happen too often. So, Manson was out there mixing up, getting the team fired up. Ricardo Kell, he had a career high 3 assists in this game, which extended his point streak at 4 games at this point in time. And kind of a fun stat too, Eddie, from this game is Silfverberg's 2 goals were in 35 seconds apart, which is the second fastest in franchise history. Do you know the player that did it the fastest? Any idea?
I saw the name. I can't remember. It was it was a random name. I know it wasn't. Yes. Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but yeah.
Okay. We're going old school here. For those of you that maybe are not, maybe you're the younger fan or you haven't been around as much from the Mighty Duck days, but J.F. Jomp did 2 goals in 13 seconds. That's the record by the team. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, we're going back in time. So there you have it. JF Jomp, 2 goals, 13 seconds. Silverberg, the second fastest in franchise history at 2 goals in 35 seconds, which was amazing. And, if you watched the game, you saw the game, Silverberg almost had a hat trick too. He had a really good opportunity again in the third period there, and even later on he had some chances. So he didn't quite get the hat trick, but Silverberg, we talked about him too. We wanted to see him get going, and he got going in this game too, Eddie, which is good. And the Ducks got scoring all the way around. The power play was going. Montour getting goals as well, and just a great effort by the Ducks all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, it was technically one of the easier games of the week if you looked at who they're playing. Obviously, at the time they were playing the best team in the West and the best team in the East in the game after this in Tampa Bay. And when you come off a disappointing loss, as I mentioned before, against a top team like that and a rival, it's good to bounce back, come out and win this game, in a significant manner. So, I think it was a statement game for them. They finally got things going on the power play. Unfortunately, it didn't really lead any momentum into the next game against Tampa Bay, as we'll talk about next. But it is a good win. Whenever you can get those 4-point games against Pacific Division opponents, it's always a good win.
Absolutely. And then, like you said, the Ducks then faced Tampa Bay. And, a little bit of controversy in this game, some disallowed goals for both teams in this game that we'll talk about. But Tampa Bay got their first goal in the second period. Silverberg, like we talked about, heating up. He got another goal in this game. It looked like the game, might have, headed towards overtime, but then JT Brown scored in the third period, and Tampa Bay ended up winning and holding on to this one 2-1. The interesting part about this game, though, is you had 2 different goals that were disallowed. And all kinds of stuff happened in this one, Eddie. We saw the one disallowed for Tampa Bay in which the puck slid onto the red line. Gibson was back in this game too, by the way. So he came back and actually played this game and the game against Boston. So Gibson got his glove down on it and swiped it out. And they had talked about how it was no goal because the evidence was not conclusive. You couldn't see where the puck went, and basically we've seen that before. Not a big deal. I mean, it made sense. Then it looked like the Ducks had gotten a goal later in the game, and it went under Valesky's pad, the white part of his pad, and you see the white part of his pad go in the net, but you don't see the puck. So, I mean, it's just frustrating. You go in by the rule. You do see the puck emerge under the pad. At that point, it's only partially over the red line, not all the way. But this rule is so frustrating, Eddie, because it's under his pad and the pad's in the net. I mean, it's a goal, but you go by the rule, it's not a goal.
Yeah. I mean, if you use common sense and you look at it, you would say, well, there's probably a 99% chance that puck's in the net. But, when you look at the rule, there has to be conclusive evidence, and 99% isn't good enough. They have to see that the puck has crossed the line. So I get it. It's disappointing. We all know that there was a better chance that the puck had probably crossed the line than it didn't. So it sucks. Did it cost the game? Maybe. I doubt it. I think in the end Tampa probably deserved to get the 2 points from this game, but it's disappointing. You like to see those calls go your way, and they don't always do. And you got to go with the rule, like you said in the end. If the rule says it's one way, you got to keep going. You got to try and keep consistent. So that's what we always talk about with any rule, with offsides, with coaches challenge, anything with reviews. You got to make it consistent. So at least they were able to do that. But all in all, I think it was a pretty good game against arguably, well, they are the best team in the NHL. I mean, to limit them to only 2 goals, Gibby was great in this game. The Ducks had some quality chances. Silverberg got his 5th of the season, but it was close. It's hard to judge them too harshly on this game. I think that it's a matter of time before you lose to this team. The Ducks beat them 4-1 last time they played, and they were able to keep Stamkos, Kucherov, and then Nestikov off the scoreboard. Of course, they did it in this game. These guys seem to score every game they're in. I mean, they're just taking the NHL by storm, especially these two, Stamkos and Kucherov, this season. So, it was a matter of time before they got on the score sheet. They did in this game, and then obviously the late one by JT Brown sealed the deal. But when you look at the 4 games this week, and specifically the 2 against the top 2 opponents, the Kings and Tampa Bay, I think it's a testament to the Ducks' effort that they were able to keep it within 1 goal and steal a point. in the Kings game. With the lineup that they have to ice every night, with the injuries they have, to go out and play these games close is pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at these 4 games, the Kings, Vancouver, Tampa Bay, and Boston. I mean, the Ducks ended up, getting a total of 5 points out of these games. So it's not bad at all. Going back to the goals and all this stuff, we didn't have any fan questions for the show this time about this, but that night got a lot of comments. What do you think about, the goal and putting in sensors either in the puck or the net or whatever, however to do it to try to figure that out? Because, if they had a sensor in the puck and somehow it's wired in with the poles and the crossbar or something, what do you think about the league trying to do something like that? I know this has come up before. It's not always, some people think, well, technology and we shouldn't do it. And other people are like, well, we have these tools now. Why don't we do it? What do you think about the league trying to do something like that?
I think it's something that we'll see in the near future. It's something from my personal experience that I've seen utilized to success in soccer. Goal line technology in soccer has changed the game for the better. The goals that you wouldn't be able to tell if they went in because they were so close. And in soccer, it's essentially the same rule. The whole ball has to cross the line for it to count. And it does a great job of determining if it goes in or not. And it's something that I think it'd be hard to put into hockey in essence, because we do have the issue that we saw in this game against Tampa Bay where, you can't implement the same thing, the overhead technology, because there's things like pads and gloves that can get in the way. So then you would have to look to, like you said, sensors or something like that. And I think it will happen eventually. I think it's in the works. They have to figure out the best way to implement it, and then we probably see a test like we do for any rule or any new thing that comes in a league. Will be tested in either the Canadian Hockey League or in the American Hockey League or somewhere else before it makes its way here, and see how it works. But yeah, I don't see it being too long from now. I think that's a step that gets made probably in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's something that, to keep your eye on the horizon, because I think it's definitely something that, hopefully will come in the near future. With that, the Ducks, they went into the next game against Boston Bruins. And, of course, more injury news, Eddie, because we love injury news. Just like everybody out there, I know you love hearing about the Ducks getting injured again. And this time it was Lindholm that had a lower body injury, and he was not able to go in this game. The Ducks went with kind of a weird lineup. We've seen Tampa Bay do this, but the Ducks went with 7 defensemen. They had Holzer come in. He actually played on the 4th line as a forward, but the Ducks did have 7 defensemen in this game. Megna came in as well to play, and it ended up working. I mean, the Ducks ended up really taking it to Boston in this game. I mean, the Ducks came out, swinging. Kevin Roy got his first goal, kind of a weird play on a deflected puck that bounced and landed in the slot, and then he just hit it while it was bouncing and it went in. So it was a great play. We saw another goal that got a bounce too. There was a delayed penalty against Boston, and Manson threw the puck towards the net, ended up going in off a defenseman's skate on Boston and into the net. So Ducks got some bounces. They had a terrible second period. That they didn't get a shot on goal till after 10 minutes or so into that period. But the Ducks ended up getting a late goal by Ritchie in there. They were ahead, 3-1, and ended up winning this one 4-2. Eddie, wasn't their best effort. I mean, they looked good in the first and third period. The second period kind of shaky, but they got the job done, and they're able to get 4 goals and take out the Bruins.
Yeah, how many times have we seen it this season where we've come out of a game and said, how did they win that game? And then you go and you look at the stat line and you see John Gibson has made 35, 40 saves. You say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Well, I mean, this is another one of those games. He made 40 saves in this one, and he was the Ducks' best player by far. I mean, some games that he's been able to save for them this season has been unbelievable. I mean, he made that ridiculous stack the pads rolling glove save in this game as well, and he's just been unbelievable this season. His numbers, again, we've mentioned this before, they don't always show it because of some of the games that he's had, and he hasn't received a lot of help in some instances, but in this game for sure, he's the real reason the Ducks ended up winning this game. And you look at that second period, like you said, I mean, the Ducks had 3 shots, and you can't really count Josh Manson's goal as a shot, and they were able to come out with 2 goals, which is huge. I mean, efficiency in that second period was key for them, and they got the late one from Nick Ritchie, which was a bonus, and Derek Grant is continuing to get on the score sheet by tipping in Perry's shot. So just all in all, I think it was a good effort. It wasn't their best performance by far, like you said. Gibby was the real savior in this one, but a surprisingly clean game between two teams who are notorious for racking up a lot of penalties.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised about that too. You had the wild game against the Kings. Obviously, we saw Manson get in a fight in the Vancouver game. Tampa Bay, a little bit here and there, not too much. But yeah, this one we've seen the Ducks and the Bruins go at it, and that didn't really happen in this game. It was kind of interesting. It was more of a speed type game, and Ducks ended up prevailing. But yeah, the bad thing is the shots against. It's just crazy. 42 shots against. I mean, the Ducks got to stop that. That's just too much. I mean, you're going to lean on Gibson and Miller. And I mean, I know they've done well so far this season, but God, you got to help these guys out in the net. I mean, that's just crazy. The Ducks also didn't even get a power play in this game. So, that was unfortunate too. But, they still came out. They got the 2 points. They did what they needed to do. And I thought it was kind of funny, Eddie, is that the game preview said the Ducks looked to bounce back against the Bruins. And then the recap was Anaheim bounces Boston, and they did. They had a couple bounces, and that's what happened. So it was just kind of funny that the way that the title worked out for the pregame, and then, of course, the recap talked about bounces because, a lot of times we, as Ducks fans, out there, we don't feel like we get bounces going our way, or if we do, they're far and few in between. In this game, we got 2 of them. It worked in the Ducks' manner. They took the momentum, and with that, they ran away with it, and they got the 2 points.
Yeah, and I mean, essentially, you get 3 with Perry's shot going in off Grant's leg. So it's nice.
True.
It's nice to get them going in our direction, and to have a game where they didn't deserve to win, but they were able to grind it out and get the 2 points. And again, I don't know how many times I can mention it. It really does come down to John Gibson in this game, and a lot of the reason that they're even above 500 is because of him, and at times Ryan Miller as well this season. The Ducks have given up a lot of shots, and that's been a big issue. And a lot of that comes down to not having your top 2 centers for sure, not having one of your best defensemen, and you can't really generate a lot of offense, and the Ducks don't get a lot of time in the offensive zone, so then the puck comes back the other way. So, it's something that we're going to have to judge a little bit down the road when the guys start coming back in the lineup. But, I mean, when you've got a guy like John Gibson in the net, 42 shots, it seems to not matter.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. Just the Ducks leaning on the goalies. And, as a fan out there, you have to be happy with this team, being over 500, doing what they're doing right now, minus all these players. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So, the way that they're going, if we can just get healthy in this next month or so and then go from there. In this game too, Eddie, Vermette played his 1,000th game, so NHL game. So, that was a big milestone for him. Happy for him. Glad that, we could be there and be part of it as Ducks fans as well. So a little stick tap to him. And, of course, a double stick tap. Very big. We all know what happened this week in between all these games was the Hockey Hall of Fame, Eddie, as Paul Kariya and Teemu Selanne were inducted to the Hall of Fame. They both gave their speeches. Everything was great. They thanked every single team that they had played for, not just the Ducks organization, which, of course, they did thank them as well. But just 2 class acts, Eddie. I don't really have much to say about their speeches. I listened to both of them. If you missed them, we did post them on our YouTube channel. You can check it out. Ducks and Pucks podcast is the name of the YouTube website that we have, and it's on there. Of course, the NHL copyrighted it. It's still on there, but now the NHL makes money off of our videos, or their videos, of course, when we try to post them. But they at least allow us to post them. So you can go there and check them out. But what did you think overall? A pretty good weekend, with them playing in the alumni-type game and whatnot. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, it just them going in together is perfect. I mean, some of the stuff they did together in the NHL career, it makes them arguably one of the best duos in NHL history. And for them to go into the Hockey Hall of Fame together, I think is great. And you look at the alumni game as well. They started off the night playing on separate teams, and then a trade is made in game. And of course, Selanne has a drop pass to Kariya, and he scores. And it's just a great way to cap off that this whole situation. I mean, to have another, a last hurrah, Selanne to Kariya for the last time, and then they go into the hall together, and it was just great. It was a great week. You talked about their speeches as well. Just two class act guys, and it's great to see Paul out and about, and seeing him involved with hockey again is just great. I don't know where it goes from here. I know a lot of people have speculated maybe, does this mean he's going to be out more? Maybe he's going to be involved more. Does he go back to what he was doing before and kind of isolate himself again? We don't really know. It would be great to see him out more and see him in the same capacity that we see Teemu at the Ducks games, but you never know. But you got to look at this week in general, and to have these two great players go into the Hall of Fame together, it's just special.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just nothing more you can really say other than, like you said, it was a great weekend. Of course, the game's coming up against Florida. If you're fortunate enough to get tickets, they're going to do the little pregame ceremony before that, which is going to be great. I know there's been a lot of questions about Kariya, like you talked about. George asked us one question. He said that Paul seems happy to be back. Do you think he gets more involved with the organization? I think he will. I mean, he's going to be there, the game against Florida, obviously. Some people did ask other questions about whether or not the Ducks were going to retire his number. I know you and I have talked about this, 2 or 3 times at least on this show. I can tell you that there's no plan for that to happen on Sunday, to retire his number. It's just going to be the Hall of Fame celebration. As far as I know, that's what I've heard. I've asked a few different people, and I know that nothing secretive is going to pop out on Sunday unless something does. But I think if they do it, they're probably going to do it at a later time. They'd rather give him that moment, just like they gave Selanne his own moment. I think that's what they would plan to do if they do it. I'm not saying that they are, but, I think, Eddie, you and I agree, we would love to see that. And that would be, if there was another player to add, that would be one. We've talked about other ones like J.S. Shiger, of course, and maybe Niedermeyer. We know that he was retired by the New Jersey Devils, obviously, but he could be honored by the Ducks. And there's a few others as well. But that's where we're at right now, and that's what it kind of looks like. And I really hope that they do plan something in the future, though, if they're going to retire his number, Eddie.
Yeah, I think that would be the next step. I always believe that retiring a number is a sacred thing. It's a special thing. I don't like when you see some teams just throw it around like it's nothing. I think it has to be the right guy. It has to be the right moment. And I think with Paul going into the Hall of Fame, I think it's just it's right now. It feels right. He's got that accolade. He's a Hall of Famer now. He's arguably one of the best players in Ducks history. You got to look at Selanne as well, and then eventually Getzlaf and Perry. But what he's done for this franchise, you can never forget. And I think it's a matter of time. I think now with him being out, at least for right now, involved more in hockey and seeming, we looked at it starting back in the playoffs last year with him just making that little appearance in the video, painting over the 9. So, I think it will happen. I think if anybody is the next one to get their name up in the rafters, it has to be him. You mentioned how we talked about guys like Niedermeyer and Shiger, but if anybody else is going to get their number retired, it has to be Paul. In my opinion, it can't be anybody else, especially now. It just has to be him.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I don't know if they talked about it a lot in the other media outlets and stuff like that, but for those of you listening out there, this. How many of you became a Ducks fan because of Paul Kariya? There are a lot of people out there that when he came on the scene, not that maybe you weren't a Ducks fan before, but you really became a Ducks fan because of him. And I think that's in it of itself is huge, because that's he really helped build this team and build the fan base, and then of course Selanne came in and then carried it on naturally. But if you got to look at you talk about Mighty Ducks and you talk about the early days and all that, and of course the name Paul Kariya is the name that you're going to point out. Of course there's Guy Bear and Steve Ruchin and a few of these other players as well, but he's the guy I think that a lot of people became Ducks fans, and I think that in alone is a reason to bring him up there. Of course, getting to the Stanley Cup and almost winning it, unfortunately, but he did a lot I think, for the city in general and the fans. And to me, that's the reason why he should be back up there, along with all the other stuff on the ice too, Eddie.
Yeah, and he's one of the main reasons I became a Ducks fan. I mean, just being he just brought a new style of play to the NHL at that time when it was more of a rough and tumble kind of league where you didn't really have these guys, these smaller guys who just whip around the ice, and he brought that here, and he got a lot of people, myself included, interested in a team in California that normally, without a player like him, you wouldn't attract much interest. And I can't thank him enough now for being there and for now me being a Ducks fan, and he's always going to be my favorite player of all time. So I mean, it's just great. I was over the moon to see him get nominated and to now see him out in the public again. I mean, when you look back at it now, it feels like it's been forever since you've seen him anywhere around hockey, and to have this week and everything, it's just been great.
Yeah, another thing to think about too is if you haven't seen it, there's a couple different videos and articles out there about what he went through when he got knocked out, and the whole thing with Stevens and everything, and the concussions and all the stuff that he could have played longer, and different things that affected him. So if you haven't seen those, Google it. I don't remember exactly which outlets have it. I know multiple have posted things, but check it out. Check out those articles. Check out the interviews and whatnot. There's a lot more to him. It's funny because he and Teemu were personality wise, you saw them joking around when they're trying on their jackets and measuring each other and stuff like that. But Selanne is obviously the more outgoing of the two, and Kariya isn't as much, which isn't a bad thing. I'm just talking about the personalities. But what's great in these other videos is he starts to open up a little bit more, Eddie, and I think that's great because everybody starts to understand exactly what's he's gone through, and now everybody kind of has an idea of where he's coming from and what's going on. Because for a little while there, everybody was kind of like, oh, he's just kind of MIA, which is true. He was a little bit. But there were a lot of things that he had to go through and deal with. And I think that this whole weekend was great because we got to, explore that. A lot of outlets went and had different things posted about it. And overall, you learned a lot more about Kariya probably than you didn't know from before. And like I said, I just hope that his number is the next to be retired, Eddie.
Yeah, and he really, in some ways, became the star of this week, of this whole induction to the Hockey Hall of Fame. Every article you saw come out about it was about him and about his story and his journey to this point. Being kind of biased, it was great to see all these stories about Paul Kariya and to hear from him in the interviews. But TSN had a great piece on the hit. Sportsnet had a similar piece where they talked to him and they talked to Scott Stevens as well, and to see if they've ever had any contact, and of course they haven't, and it's a touchy subject for both of them, as you can see. But it's great to get some insight into what he was going through after his career ended, and some of the feelings that he felt towards the league and towards hockey in general, and the animosity he had after what he felt was his career ended too early. So it's great to see him share that. It's sad because imagine the player he could have become without all these concussions. He's already in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He's a great player, but just imagine some of the seasons he could have had without the injuries. So, it's great to look back and hear his story.
Yeah, like you said, it would have been interesting to see, if he would have, played longer, stayed with the Ducks and Teemu, and how that would have all panned out. It could have been, but still a great influence in the sport of hockey in Anaheim and, of course, around the world. And you can check it out. Obviously, on Sunday, they're going to play the Florida Panthers. I don't know if they're going to win this game because Florida seems to have the Ducks number. It's going to be a tough game, Eddie. But if you've got a ticket, hopefully you can go and see it beforehand. It looks like it's going to be about 15, 20 minutes before puck drop that they're going to do some stuff. And I'm sure that the Ducks are going to do things throughout the game as well. We'll try and have that recorded, too, if there's anything that's televised beforehand. Throw that on the YouTube channel. Thankfully, the NHL lets us do that, Eddie. But we'll try and do that for you guys as well. We'll try and go through all the fan questions. There's some stuff been going on lately with all these injuries, and people have rumors coming up and all these questions, Eddie. Of course, the big one is, and Joshua asks about trading Sammy Vatanen. I've had a few other people hit me up about that as well. Of course, JVR's name got thrown around again. Galenchuk. I mean, all these names are being thrown around. What do you think, Eddie? I mean, do you think the Ducks are going to try to do something, with Vatanen, or do you think that they should just try and hold where they're at, or what?
I believe that they still wait and they get all these guys back, other than Eves, of course, and see where they are. I think, they haven't been without Kessler since the start of the season. Getzlaf's only played about 6 games, and, you've been without Andre Kasha now as well. Once you get these guys back in the lineup, I think it's better to just kind of see where things can go from there. And you don't have to be drastic right now. We talk about the Ducks surprisingly being above 500 and still being able to fight for a playoff spot. I don't think it's a time to make a drastic move like that and ship out a top 4 defenseman. That's something I more see if the Ducks are in the mix come trade deadline, and they feel like if that move can make them better, if they actually have a shot at getting a quality top 6 forward, then maybe a deal gets done. But it's a tough one to do even, anytime during the regular season.
And he has another question, because it kind of goes to that too. So if we don't make a move, he talks about all the defensemen and what are the Ducks going to do, because you have Magna, Montour, Fowler, Vatanen, Lindholm, Manson, Boschman, Bieksa, and Holzer, which is true. You have all these guys. Obviously, I mean, we're pretty sure Magna goes back down. What do you think that they do with these guys? Because, we did see Holzer play forward in the game against Boston, and that's kind of what he's asking is, how would that work? That's why I think he's leaning towards us saying, shouldn't we trade Vatanen, because we're going to have all these guys, especially when Fowler comes back.
Yeah, it's tough. Obviously the locks are Lindholm, Vatanen, Fowler, and Manson. From there, it gets questionable. You would think that Brandon Montour would be a lock because of his play this season, but he is the only guy that's on that list that's waiver exempt. So there's a possibility that he does get sent down because they don't have to do anything. There's also, you look at Francois Beauchemin as well as a guy that we thought would be a 7th defenseman to start the season. Maybe he gets healthy scratched a couple games and it gets put in games where either back-to-backs or games where they think that his presence can help. Holzer is a guy that I think probably gets sent down through waivers. I don't see anybody really picking him up. But from there, you've got 7 guys that you've kind of got to work out how you're going to roll with. And I think the only real 2 options are to either scratch Beauchemin and play him as a 7th defenseman, or to send Brandon Montour down because it's the easy thing to do. And we've seen the Ducks do that in the past with Shea Theodore. They've sent him down because it's the easy thing to do. And Vegas did that this year as well. They sent him down because Shea Theodore was waiver exempt and it was the easiest thing to do. So, I really hope they don't because of how Montour has played this season. But when all those guys come back, realistically, Montour is playing a bottom pairing role. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, and if they send Montour down, I know everybody out there, you're all going to throw up your pitchforks and be pissed. That's what we always talk about.
I'm warning you guys now, because that's a real possibility if all 4 of these, Manson, Vatanen, Lindholm, and Manson are all healthy. That's a realistic possibility.
Yeah, I think the pitchforks and the burning down of Anaheim is going to be chanted again if that happens. Because we saw that with Theodore, people were really upset, and rightfully so. I mean, I get it, but then I get it on the other standpoint, like you said, Eddie, too. I mean, you have a player that's waiver exempt. I mean, that's it's unfortunate, but that was how it would work. I think they would send Magna down. I would like them to go with Fowler, Vatanen, Lindholm, Manson, and Montour, and then rotate between Bieksa and Beauchemin, and I guess Holzer too, unless, as Darren Price pointed out, Holzer, played on the 4th line. And what do we think about that? Well, I thought he looked okay. I mean, he only played about 9 minutes in that game against Boston, but we've talked about Holzer as being a good role player. I think he's better suited on the blue line, but he's more that 7th guy. I mean, he filled in because Rasmussen was a healthy scratch that game. And, he didn't do anything really wrong. He didn't really do anything right. I mean, he was there. but I think he still fits the defensive role. And I think it's sometimes some people rather have him than Bieksa because he doesn't make as many mistakes out there. But Bieksa's at times had some good games too. So that's kind of where I am. That's what I would think, is that they would rotate that last spot between Bosch, Bieksa, and Holzer. But we'll have to see. Like you said, Eddie, there's the possibility that Montour could go down through waivers. If a trade isn't made for Vatanen, as Joshua's been talking about. So that's some stuff to look at. We had a few other people asking those questions about trades. There's really nothing out there concrete. There's tons of rumors. Don't listen to all the rumors. They all get thrown around. We remember when I think it was last season that they were saying that Lindholm was going to be traded, and that was a rumor that someone spread that we proved that was false. So not saying that Vatanen won't be traded or that a trade won't be made. It's just right now we haven't really seen anything legit. It seems like there is interest from other teams. We've heard that. But I don't know if it's going to happen, Eddie. I think the Ducks, the way they're playing, I think they're just going to hang on right now. I mean, you have to like how they're doing. I mean, they're over 500. Yeah, they're not killing it, but with what they've got right now, I mean, I'm not really that upset with the way the Ducks are doing.
Yeah, I think it's surprising that they are over 500 with the injuries they've had. I think if you'd have told me at the beginning of the season they would be out without Ryan Kessler and Ryan Getzlaf, without Cam Fowler, that they would actually be above 500. And at times they were without, Vatanen and Lindholm and Kasha. So, there's been so many guys out of the lineup. I would have been surprised to see them at 8-7-3 at this point in the season. So I think it's good. As for blockbuster trades, I don't see anything happening at this point. But Eddie Richard made a good point. He asked, do you think the Ducks should make some sort of move to help fill voids, talking about more of a depth trade more than anything. And I think if any trade does happen, that's most likely the realistic option. The Ducks might go out and get a top 9 or a bottom 6 forward if anything else occurs, or if they're looking for some help. But right now I think they don't really need to. You look at the guys who've come up, Kalle Kasila, Kevin Waugh, those guys have come up and done very well and contributed enough that the Ducks don't really have to go out and make a move. And of course, I guess you can slot Holzer in on the fourth line whenever you need to and add some depth there. But yeah, I think, with Grant and Wagner, and when Cash is in the lineup, even Logan Shaw to some extent, the way these guys have played, the Ducks haven't had to make a move.
Yeah, and I think you're right. If they do make a move, I think a depth move is more of something that they would go. We've seen Murray do this time and time again, where he's done these moves, and the trade deadline or some other time, where we're like, "What the heck is this?" And you at first you kind of look at it like, "Why do we do that?" And then you kind of realize, oh, okay, if you research a little bit better, and you're like, okay, this guy did this, and that's why they're... Well, yeah, that was a good one, I mean, and he's made the big ones too, obviously Kessler back in the day, of course, but I think you're right. I don't know if they'll do much. I mean, they can throw Holzer in there. Like I said, he didn't really do anything spectacular, but he didn't do anything wrong. He could definitely fill in on the fourth line if they need that too. So they have that option, which I'm not opposed to it. That's something that can work as well in their favor. So that's all that's really going on for the Ducks right now is obviously a lot of rumors flying around out there that they're going to trade a defenseman again, which, we've heard this for, God, I don't know, about a year or so. But right now, nothing solid. If something comes up, then we'll see what happens. But like you said, I think it's going to be more of a depth move. And with that, the Ducks, have their depleted lineup still. Today they had practice. Lindholm was back on the ice, which is good. And he was interviewed. If you saw the little interview, it was kind of funny. He told Randy Carlyle that he was 109% ready, Eddie, because Carlisle always asks if you're 110, so he said he's 109. So that pretty much means that he's ready. So he should be good to go Sunday against Florida. Obviously, like we talked about, huge game because they're going to honor Teemu and Paul before that game. This is going to be a tough game, Eddie. And this week's actually going to be a tough week. We're pretty optimistic in the points. We're always like, oh, they're going to win this many games and get this many points. You look at the schedule, this week's pretty brutal. The Ducks have this extra weekend off here. And then they play Florida on Sunday, San Jose on Monday. They go up there real quick. They come back. They play Vegas for the first time at home on Wednesday. Then, of course, you've got the after Thanksgiving game. Thank God it's not against Chicago. It's going to be against the Jets this year. That's that 1 o'clock start. And then they play the Kings on the road Saturday night. So you've got two back-to-backs. You've also got the games against, all the teams that we're trying to chase, Eddie. You've got the Kings, Vegas, San Jose, 1, 2, and 3 in the division. You're trying to take them out. You have Florida, who, they haven't had a great season, but they always play us tough. And you've got the Jets, who've really turned it on lately. They've been playing very, very well. So, in these 5 games, Eddie, I mean, if the Ducks could win 3 out of the 5, I would be happy, mainly against the Kings, Vegas, and San Jose, of course. But it's going to be a tough week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the toughest division schedule so far this season. You look at who they're facing. They're facing the top 3 teams in the Pacific Division. And this is a real chance to start gaining ground on those guys. And if you lose all 3, that's going to put them in a big hole. They're only 1 point behind San Jose right now. They're 4 points behind Vegas and 5 points behind the Kings. Obviously, there's some games in hand swinging back and forth between teams here, but it's a big week. You look at the starting with Florida. Florida's actually going to be on the second game of a back-to-back when they play Anaheim, so it's a little bit of an advantage starting there. Florida plays Saturday, and then I believe they play, I think it's the Kings on Saturday, and then they come in and they play the Ducks on Sunday. So that's a little bit of an advantage there. Hopefully the Ducks can catch them a little bit tired and get things started. And then San Jose right after that on the Monday, and that's going to be a tough game. San Jose has started to turn things around a little bit. They're 7-3-0 in their last 10, so they had a slow start, and things are starting to turn around for them. But it's always a tough game, especially when you go into the SAP Center. The Shark Tank is a very difficult place to play, especially for Anaheim, so it's going to be a tough game. And after, again, the second game of a back-to-back, we don't know if we're going to see Miller or Berra. Most likely probably Berra for now on, unless they decide to play Gibby for that game against San Jose. But it'll be interesting to see what they do there. And it doesn't get any easier. You go and you play Vegas, who, as we mentioned at the beginning of the season, has finally started to cool down a little bit. Luckily, we're not playing them at home where they're unbelievable. We're playing them at Honda Center, so I think that's a game that the Ducks can go out and win. And then the last stretch is the hardest one of the week, in my opinion. You've got the Winnipeg Jets, who are just on a roll right now. They've won their last 3 games, the second-best team in the last 10 games, only behind the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then you got to go right from there and play the LA Kings the next night. So it's going to be tough. They got to try and pick up the points at the home games, and luckily the road games on the back-to-backs aren't too much of a travel, so it's not going to be as impactful as normal back-to-backs would be. But it's going to be important that they pick up these points against Pacific Division rivals.
Yeah, and I think the biggest question, too, like you said, this week is going to be the goalie situation. I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, we don't know if Miller's going to, be back in time this week yet or not. He wasn't at practice today. Obviously, Getzlaf, Fowler, and Kessler weren't out there as well, and Kasse too. So you got a bunch of these guys out. Of course, Eves too. We still don't know, but a lot of these guys are out. They're trying to figure out the goalie situation. I don't know if they put in Berra against Florida and then put in Gibson against San Jose or vice versa. And then same thing, like you said, Winnipeg and then the Kings. That's the part that's going to be interesting to me, is if Miller comes back, then they can flop him in there. But it's just tough with this team. Unfortunately, we've just had such bad luck with different things going on. Every single day, it just seems like it's coming up. And I know some of you asked the fan questions, more of, I guess, just comments that you guys are just tired of it. And trust me, we're tired of it too. We don't want to be covering and talking about injuries all the time. So I think the Ducks can still get some of these games, Eddie. It's not going to be easy, but like we said, it's a big week against Pacific Division teams. You got the 3 that you're trying to catch, and that these games are going to be physical, especially against San Jose and the Kings. Florida's just been rough. For some reason, that they've had the Ducks number the last couple seasons. The Ducks have had a hard time. Hopefully they can win that game, obviously, because it's the Hall of Fame night. But we'll also have a watch party too, like I mentioned earlier, against when they play the Kings at El Ranchito in Orange on that Saturday night. So that should be a good one. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a packed house. And we're also doing a t-shirt sale too because of Kariya and Selanne. If you check out tpnhockey.com, most of the shirts, not all, but a big chunk on there are either $8 or $9. So you do the math. There's a reason why they're $8 or $9. Honoring Kariya and Selanne. So we've got that going on, and we'll hope to be back probably about a week or so, depending on how the schedule pans out, and just how Eddie and I try and work it out amongst ourselves when we can get together. And thanks for listening. Let's go Ducks.